What's up, fam? Got a few minutes here. I want to talk about unlocking the king archetype and why, in my experience, it seems like you need a relationship, you need an intimate partner, and for me, a woman, to unlock your king. So why is this? Well, let's talk about this. I'm going to be drawing from Robert Moore, king, magician, lover, warrior, king, whatever. And Bill Plotkins, as well as my own experience with these archetypes and horrible polarities, imbalances, and the shadow sides of these. Anyways, let's talk about the king archetype. So, the role of the king is to protect and nurture. Okay? The king is the center. He's the center of the entire kingdom, right? It's like in The Lion King. The first thing that Mufasa teaches Simba is that you see all the land, everywhere the light touches is your kingdom. You must know your kingdom, right? Know your sovereignty, know what you own. And so that's like the first principle. One of the most defining traits of the king is centeredness, the ability to show up an unwavered stone in any storm, right? To have that calm, compassionate, wise, and nurturing self within you. And this is brought out through the balance of the magician on the west with the lover on the east, and being in your warrior in the south, ascending to your king, ascending the pillar. And why a relationship has been critical in my life is because it demands you show up. In any relationship that is between two conscious individuals, like in my experience, damn, Katie sniffs inauthenticity. She sniffs inauthenticity in me, and also like I need to be able to show up strongly and hold space, or like own my love, or own, you know, whatever it is. And that's what the king does. He shows up in his power, owning his love, owning his space, and being a power, a force of stability, a force of centeredness. That is the king. So let's go a little deeper. The king holds the space and establishes the divine order. He is the dot at the center of the sun and holding the ring. He's holding the space, right? And holding it at the center. And the role of the king is to protect and nurture. But perhaps like the most defining attribute is the fact that he establishes divine order. And divine order is being a vehicle for something higher than you. The king archetype is the intermediary between the heavens and the earth. He establishes divine order. If you look at ancient divine kingship in the pharaohs of Egypt, the pharaohs were not some kind of like egotistical tyrants. Well, not the true pharaohs like 10,000 years ago before the dynastic Egyptians. The true pharaohs, if you listen to Manly P. Hall or Rudolf Steiner on this, it talks about these pharaohs giving like the ultimate sacrifice. And that is the giving up of all their personal ambitions, desires, all these boyish, what Robert Moore would call boyish, immature impulses, that is of the self. They give it all up in sacrifice to service of the group soul, what the group needs, right? And to be a king, externally, let's keep on ancient Egypt, right? You need to be able to, in the middle of crisis, you need to be firm as a stone, calm, collected, and poised, right? A rock in the storm. And you are a supreme force of balance and peace, unshakable, right? And on top of all that, the king needs to, I guess, be able to make decisions when everyone else is telling him or like influencing to make this one. The king needs to be able to be so tapped into his inner wisdom and the inner truth and the I guess the truth of spirit, that when all things are pointing him in one direction, he can stand firm in his own. Now let's bring that into a relationship. In a relationship, for a man, the masculine pole of the relationship, whatever that looks like, it is so crucial to own your space, to own I guess in a sense, to be able to show up fully, or where were we just talking on this? Oh, the sacrifice, rock in a storm. Oh, you need to be able to own your inner wisdom and listen to your inner wisdom. The moment that we, or the masculine pole, or a man, stops moving on impulses that come from the deepest part of his core, like true impulses, right? He loses his power, he loses his vitality, he loses his kingship, right? And guess what? The woman or the feminine pole in a relationship, what it craves is a divine masculine presence. Something that like owns that pole so that the feminine can surrender into that container. You see, the tenderest impulse of the feminine principle is to surrender. And in order to surrender, the feminine must feel safe in the container. And that means the man holding it with the divine masculine presence. This brings us into the main point of the video. How are you showing up? You see, until I had an intimate relationship that demanded of me like showing up very often on a regular basis, right? And then a reflection that could sniff inauthenticity. And if I was being weak, man, that would instantly be reflected in the relationship because it was so 100, right? And having that literally teaches you how to show up in mature presence. You see, instead of showing up with boyish energy or premature energy, all this like excitement or like anxiety about something or like flippantly from one thing to the next thing, you have to show up into the container and hold the container. And that means like disattaching from such, you know, emotional and mental whirlwind and turmoil. It means having a balance between being and thinking and doing, you know? And the king is the sovereign. The king is behind the thoughts. It's behind the emotions. It's behind the action, right? And to be able to stand in that, cool, calm, and collected, and holding space, that is it. So, why we need to balance the magi and the lover. The lover is the beer. It is like the enjoyment of life, its emotions, its feelings, right? And in some men, you know, there's a skew here. Some men are more leaning towards the magi, and some men have a disposition more towards the lover. And the knowledge of self, where you fall in this wheel, right, is crucial, because then you know which pole we must balance. And for me, I'm obviously very far towards the magi. So having an intimate relationship that was so intense, like a one-room box all winter, right? She broke her back at the beginning of winter. And having that, dang, I needed to learn how to be. And but be through the day. And carrying my magi too, because I still needed to get things done. And it was a very tender act of learning right there. And being able to balance the being, the contentment, the joy for just where you are right now, with the magi who's thinking in systems and is seeking the hidden knowledge and the knowing. He's the knower. And the magi is also the forming force of manifestation, right? And manifestation occurs, true manifestation occurs when we can balance the pole of gratitude and contentness, and connection to this moment being, along with holding the vision and holding the sacred space. You see, the magi holds the sacred space and enters into that. He's also like the master of mysteries and the initiator. And going through your own initiations is when you're in the West, when you're in the magi. And being able to balance the horizontal axis of the lover and the magician, right, allows the warrior to ascend. Now you must find your warrior and be in your warrior. To be in the South is to be in your body. It is to be in summertime. It is to be diligent and focused, right? The warrior is defined by three qualities in my mind. The first one is aggression. Now, not the aggression you think of, but aggression in the sense of attacking things with vigor, head on, like no thought of failure. The warrior is usually going into battle, right? It's life or death. He does things all the way through. So vigor, like he's on the offense, right? And in order to, I guess, direct that powerful energy, the warrior needs a purpose. And you see, the magician delivers the orders down to the warrior. And having the magician and the warrior working in harmony is critical. And that means the warrior must be disciplined. The warrior must be a master of, I guess, his own self-reliance. Self-control is what I'm looking for, right? And so that he can follow the orders of the Magi. And when the Magi works with the lover, that is where inspiration comes from. That is where excitement and like joy for the creation. And you see, the lover is the power force. It's the power principle that empowers all the other archetypes. So being emotionally connected to something, right? And holding the vision, holding like the divine sight in your mind, and then delivering the orders down to the warrior who's going to walk and ascend the pole. The warrior is the key to accessing the king. And on top of that, why he needs a purpose, why he must have a mission, is because the warrior must have a very clear idea of right and wrong. What should he be doing and what shouldn't he be doing? Like, who is the enemy, right? You see, people who have a disposition towards the warrior archetype are very rigid in their belief systems of this is right, that is wrong. Like, I like doing, and you know, it's the warrior mentality. And if purpose is delivered from the Magi down to the warrior, and the warrior is decisive, he is in self-control and discipline. He walks with aggression and vigor towards the obstacle, towards the foe, right? These three archetypes, cultivated in wholeness, right? With your eyes on the prize of the king, you will ascend, right? You will ascend and embody the fourth power. And you see, my friends, the four mature archetypes within the man, and also embodied within the woman, but slightly different. It's just a different balance. There's masculinity and femininity within all of us in different degrees. But the four mature archetypes are only potentialities within the self. You see, you have a self, an embodying whole, right? And your ego rests at the center. And the goal of life, according to Carl Jung, who's really the founder of all this kind of knowledge, the goal is to transmute the unconscious into consciousness. It is to actualize your potential, therefore transmuting the darkness into light. That which is the mystery, that which is beyond the self-awareness of the ego, right? Within the self, must be discovered, cultivated, and grown into. Knowing that there's four mature masculine archetypes within men, like 2 axes, 4 poles, we have to understand that rarely are they ever accessed in fullness. The fullness of the archetype must be cultivated. It must be cultivated by standing at the extreme, by standing at that pole and holding the power. And how great of a range can you create, right? How, like, developing and cultivating your warrior, cultivating your magician, cultivating your lover until they're in fullness and in virtue, right? Because there's so many different shadow deviations away from them. So that is the potential of man. And it's funny because, like, in Carl Jung's eyes and his understanding, the archetypes, like the fullness of an archetype is literally a god. You have gods within you, and we must cultivate and give birth to that archetype so that we can embody it. But not only embody one, if we can balance the poles, right? We unlock the king. We unlock Zeus, right? The king of the gods. And unlocking your king is learning to balance the pole and hold your center. Learning to hold space and show up. How you show up for anything is how you'll show up for everything That's probably the next video I'm going to come at you guys with. This is psychology and archetypes, the self, the ego, and yeah, really just developing into your king. Final points here. The warrior is born from the hero, right? So where are you on your journey? I would really encourage you to tap into the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover book, and Bill Plotkin's and Soulcraft and Wild Mind. And, you know, getting a sense and knowing where you are and being where you are so fully is the key, my friends, because then you don't compensate and create shadow forms of these archetypes. And the hero, like, I remember always reading fantasy books, and then I was called on my adventure, and I dropped out of school when I went. And like, I've lived in my hero for a long time. I really had a strong hero like complex inside of me, you know what I mean? Because I had to save myself. And that transmutes and becomes your warrior. I remember when I first started working out, it was always like, I was in a fantasy book. But by the end of like senior year of high school, when I was working out, I was just in my warrior. I was getting my shit done. I was getting my, you know, all my stuff done for school. And that's the warrior. It's disciplined. It's very orderly, right? And it's so black and white for the warrior. It must be, so that his energy can be used in the right ways. And lastly, the king is born of the divine child. Remember this. The divine child will lead you back to your heart. It will lead you back into wholeness. Wholeness occurs when we can forgive ourselves and go through all the shit and get all the way back and commune with our divine child, or the other in Bill Plotkin's mind, really, which is like your soul, your deepest inner nature. And by re-communing with the divine child, like cacao ceremonies and different types of things that are heart opening, right? And communing with that divine child is the key to accessing the king, because the divine child gives birth to your king. Now, my friends, balance the poles, balance the horizontal plane, and rise from your warrior to your king. Relationships and externalization of the relationship in here is an amazing tool for unlocking your king. If you guys want to work with me one-on-one, I do powerful coaching sessions, and there's a link in the description. You can apply for a free one-on-one. And yeah, conscious creators, if you want to go into psychology, archetypes, like personal growth, whatever it is, I would love to work with you. Just reach out and shoot me a message if you feel so inclined. Also, Tribe Nature Immersion this September. Taking a small group out here into Colorado. We're doing archetypal walks, so much different breath work and movement and connection and tribe building. And if that interests you, there's also a link in the description for the retreat. Going to be an awesome 4-day celebration of life. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and definitely share this. I'm trying to get the message out there. And yeah, I would love to hear what you thought about this, you know, what you liked about it. And if you want to see more on psychology and archetypes. Love you guys. Peace.